Hey, welcome to the second day of project work. As you recall, last class or session or whatever it's called, we introduced the project. The project can be found on the wiki of our lunch learning channel. Right here, the final project. You can see here we've got some, first off, the recordings. We've got the assumptions. We added one last time, or Eric and I talked about adding one last time. You can count on the entries of the file to be in order, right? So the top of the file will have an entry for January 2019. The second line will have a row for February 2019, and they will be in order. Any questions about that added assumption?
Is the fourth one down?
Oh, you already added it?
Yeah.
Thank you. I see now that you've done that. I was about to chastise you for not doing that, but I take it back. Eric Tang, everybody. This is wonderful. Okay, those are our assumptions, and here is a quick outline of the program, right? So we're going to collect data from a user, we're going to collect data from a file, we're going to do some calculations, and we're going to do some display. I won't go over this again. You've got all the video from last time and also the documentation. And this picture down here at the bottom, I don't know, can you make this bigger in Teams? Save it, make it your desktop background. There you go. Okay, this is the basic flow of the program. As we said, you're welcome to work on this program by yourself. In fact, I'd encourage that, but I also understand that sometimes the best way to learn is by working together in a group. So we are going to continue to build this program together today. That's going to be the duration of the recording, unless anyone has any questions right now. I know a couple of you have said that you're done. You teachers' pets, you. Good job. Who's done in here? Raise your hand. All right, we got 3 of you done. Very good. Any insights for us as we go building? Tips, advice?
So it was really helpful for me to be able to have a range of dates to pull from in a list. So that's helpful.
What do you mean a range of dates?
So in order to go through each of the calculations, it is helpful to say, okay, well, I've got these dates that I need to go through. What do I have to do on each month of these dates? And then it was really, really easy at that point to just do whatever needed to be done for that month.
Let the recording show that John called this very, very easy. So keep that in mind as you're programming. If you can't get it, just kidding. Okay. Michael, did you have anything you wanted to share with us?
Add a lot of comments to your code so you can go back and look at it and know what it does. And I guess make every little action a method so that you can go back and troubleshoot it. Were my 2 takeaways.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Great. Okay. Well, Eric Tang. Oh, yeah.
I have a question on that.
Yes. What's your question?
So when we debug, how do we provide the input like to the console? Like I notice when I debug, I don't know how to actually give the program, hey, this is what I want, and have it move on. Like, I couldn't quite figure that out, so I just ended up like hard coding certain values and stuff like that as I'm debugging, because I couldn't figure out how to get the console to work with the debugging, Visual Studio Code at least.
You should be able to use the immediate window to assign values, I believe, unless I'm wrong.
I don't know. Yeah, I couldn't figure it out. So,
Anyway,
but yeah, there are like workarounds for that, right? You can just hard code the value that you wanted it to be and stuff like that, and move on. But anyways.
It's a good question. Visual Studio Code is a new tool to me, and I need to do the research to figure that out. Yep. I have no answer. I'm sorry. I failed you.
No, you're fine.
Someone bring me my katana and I will commit the harikari.
Jeez. No, so I think, so in addition to that, then like this going along with my question is don't be afraid of debugging, I guess. You know, like if your program is not doing what it's supposed to, just make sure you debug and figure out where it's going wrong. It'll be really helpful because I got stuck a few times, and you know, debugging really helped me. Because at some point your program is going to be fairly big to the point where you're like, oh, I don't know where it went wrong. And yeah.
How many lines of code did you end up with, John?
Just over 200, I think.
Just over 200? Okay. Mine was only 150. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
A suggestion for another, since we're teaching this again, or a sequel to this, to teach unit testing. And to put things in a deal, library instead, right?
That's a good suggestion. Suggestion was use unit testing to test your inputs. That's a lot faster than typing stuff over and over again. So certainly. Okay, well, let's get started. Started again. So we did this part of the program last time. We asked a user for their age as a number. And as you'll recall, we went back and we wrote a bunch of code, right? The main function calls a function, get valid age from user. Get valid age from user has validation built into it, right? It calls another function, validate user entry. Okay, and validate user entry, make sure that we have provided a number by using the try parse function. Okay, and we also added this is valid answer in anticipation of other questions that we will need to ask. So going back to our project documentation, the next thing we need to do is ask the user to rate their activity level from 1 to 5. So we need to create a function, or we need to write code to do this. Okay? So where should I begin? First off, let's write a function, right? I'm going to say public. I'm not even going to say public. I'm just going to say static. If this is a function that's supposed to get a number 1 through 5, what should the return type of this function be?
Integer.
I like it. Okay, and what would you call this function?
What are we trying to do?
So we're about to do 0.2 or 1b. Is that right? We're doing 1b, ask the user to rate their activity level on a scale of 1 to 5.
Activity level.
Okay, public int get activity level. I like it. What are the inputs for this function? What do we need to tell this function in order to get an input level? Or an activity level, pardon me. Probably nothing at this point, right? So the idea here is very similar to get valid age from user. We're going to ask the user a question. We're going to read their input. And then we're going to make sure that they did valid input. And if they didn't, we're going to ask the question again until they give us valid input, right? So to start, I'm going to do something naughty. And I'm going to copy this entire function here and paste it. Okay, but let's rename some variables.
How much did you copy? You just copied just the...
I copied everything from age is equal to 0 down to the return statement. I copied the entire contents of the body of the function, not including curly brackets. So I have two functions now that are very identical. I'm going to go through and change the variable names. I'm going to say activity level, and I'll make sure that we change it in all the places. And I'm going to ask a different question. What is your activity level? 1 to 5 scale. Okay. And then I need to return, right now, because I copied and pasted, I'm returning age, which is a variable that doesn't exist. I'm going to say activity level. So this function looks about right. Okay, with one exception, we need to make sure that the number is between 1 and 5. So what can I do? Well, before I do that, let me just say this. It's not a really super great idea to create a function per question, right? Because we are about to ask the user a whole bunch of questions, right? We're going to ask them for an activity level 1 to 5. We're going to ask them for a nutrition level 1 to 5. We're going to ask them for a number of covered dependents, which is a number. We're going to ask them for how dedicated a savings dedication level and an employer benefits level. If we follow the pattern that we have just done, we're going to have, what, 8 functions that are very, very similar. So before we do that, I want to try and have one function that's a little more flexible, right? That allows me to ask all of these questions and get a valid number from, so I don't have to keep copying and pasting. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to make a third function, which solves our problem. A third duplicate. I'm just kidding. What I'm going to do is the activities of this function are at a high level very similar, right? We ask the user for input, we make sure it's a number, and then we return the number, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say, give me a function called get valid number from user. Okay, and I'm going to take a question. Actually, I'm just going to call it prompt because this is the stuff I will prompt the user with when I want input. Okay, instead of asking a hard-coded question in here, and by that I mean the question is part of the function definition, I'm going to use the question that I passed in. I'm going to make this generic, and instead of saying age, I'm just going to call it number. Now, this function, and this function are very similar, right? But instead of doing this, right? So you can see now I'm calling my two functions that are very similar. Instead of doing that, and I'll leave this code in here just temporarily so you can see the difference, I'm going to call my one function and pass it a question to ask the user. And then I'm going to reuse that function for the activity level. So instead of having 2 plus many, many more functions that are extremely similar, I now have one function that is reused multiple times. And that's the beauty of functions, right? I can use this code, I can make it flexible. I'm eventually going to use this function many times to ask the user for many numbers. Does anyone have any questions? First off, I'm going to, okay, before I delete anything, let's start back here with John.
So isn't the validation for getting the user's age different from getting a scale from 1 to 5?
Yes, it is different, and we're going to add another layer here, but you'll see how we also reuse this code that we have, get valid number from user, right?
That was my question, is just
Okay.
putting logic to.
So the string prompt, have we done the prompt yet, or is that integrated in the?
So the prompt is something that when someone wants to get a valid number from user, they have to give us some input to that function call. They have to give us a question or a prompt to ask, right? And so you can see up here, get valid number from user. Anytime a client of that function wants to get some input, they have to provide the question to ask the user. I can't say 4. I can't say get valid number from user and not provide a question, right? Because it says, no, if you want to call this, you have to pass me the question to ask the user. Otherwise, I have no idea what to ask the user.
So the program already knows what a prompt would be, and that's within the parentheses.
The program knows what a prompt is because here in the definition of the function, I have said, you must give me a prompt, and I write that out to the console.
But prompt is our own word. It's not a
Prompt is our own word. We could call it the question.
And it would be
But
reading.
string is what tells it there's going to have to be something to write out here.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. I'm going to delete a bunch of code now. Goodbye. Checking in is for, I'm just kidding. Okay. To further illustrate this, I'm going to ask a couple of the other questions that I need, and it's going to be much faster than writing a new function, changing variable names, and changing the question inside of all those different functions. Right now I'm going to ask them for the number of dependents they have, even though that's a little out of order. How many covered dependents, right? Getting that information into my program was so much faster than what I just showed you for activity level. Because functions. Use them. Okay, so John pointed out something interesting. The validation for valid number is very different from valid number between 1 and 5. So we need to write some extra code to make sure we're getting a number between 1 and 5. So what I'm going to do is create a new function. It has to return us a number, so I'm going to choose int, and I'm going to call it get valid number between 1 and 5 from user. And it's going to take in string a question. And it's got to do a couple things. I don't want to write the code to go get a valid number from the user and then make the check to see if it's between 1 and 5. I want to reuse this. So I'm going to use my get valid number from user function. I'm going to write valid C#. Okay. But I need to add the validation here to make sure that the number is between 1 and 5.
So result needs to be greater than 0 and less than 6.
Okay, function's yelling at me right now because it says, hey buddy, not all code paths return, right?
So would you put an else in there for you didn't put in the valid number?
Else 4 is wrong. Else is correct, yes. So else, I need to do something else. And probably what we want to do is continue to ask the question, right, to make sure that we eventually get a valid number. So we probably need a while loop. So I'll wrap all of this in a while loop. First off, I need something to key off of. Remember, while loops will repeat statements until a condition is met. So the condition I'm trying to meet will be bool is valid num between 1 and 5. Okay. Then I want to write a while loop. While they haven't given me a valid number, I want to do this. I want to go get the number using my previous function. I want to do this. I want to make sure that the number they gave me is between 1 and 5. And I could rewrite this, right? This is probably a little more readable, right? Because if I look in a function to see if it's between 1 and 5, but I don't see those numbers in there, then maybe that would be a little confusing. And indentation, very important to us OCD folks. Okay. Rather than returning the result at this point, we want to set our variable. Okay. Delete space. So right now, people are yelling at me saying, hey, not all code paths return a result. I need to use the return keyword to say, all right, I'm done, save the function. So let's walk through what just happened, right? Actually, before we do that, I am now going to call this function. Activity level is the one that has to be between 1 and 5, right? Okay, let's see if it works first off before I start expounding. Here we go. Austin, what is your age?
47.
47.
42, right? That's the answer.
I don't believe you. What is your activity level between 1 and 5?
Oh, it's definitely a 1.
7 it is. What is your activity level between 1 and 5? 0. Okay. 9. 1 million.
4.5.
4. Okay. How many covered dependents? 100.
Because it's an integer, it would give you an unhandled exception.
Okay, does this input look correct to you? Is our program doing the correct things? 31 is not between 1 and 5, but we don't care because we're not calling get valid number between 1 and 5. We entered 7, 0, and 9 and 1 million, and it kept asking us the question until we gave it a number between 1 and 5, 4. So I feel like we have what we need. So let's go through and let's continue to, does anyone have any questions about the code we've written so far? So far we haven't written much duplicate code, right?
Can I see line?
Hey Ben, I have a rude.
Which line? Oh, you got it. All right, be rude to me.
So now your boss says activity level can be 1 to 10 instead of 1 to 5.
Okay. I quit. So what Braden is getting at here is we can make this function even more flexible by accepting a lower limit and an upper limit for the range, right? If we had parts of our program that needed a number between 1 and 10, well, guess what? We'd have to take this function, copy and paste it, rename it to get valid number between 1 and 10, and then we just change this line and we'd have duplicated functions basically with one line of difference. And that's how we make developers quit. Okay, so let's refactor. Real quick, I'm going to implement.
All right, you got me.
So I'm going to call this get valid number between, and I'm going to say int low, int high, and then the question. Instead of hard coding 1 and 5, I will say low. 5, I will say high.
And then up above in the actual question, you'll set what those low and high are for each
Right.
function.
Yep. Rename the function. So there you go. One downside to this is we're going to be calling the function over and over again and providing 1 and 5 over and over again. Now, something we're going to live with, but I think it's a good change. Okay. Let's get the next thing, nutrition level. Someone help me write the code to get the nutrition level into the program. I am now smart/dumb keyboard, and I will only type what you tell me. Also, I'm going to eat this chicken Greek taco. Please formulate your questions slowly.
Or we can do enter after the line you're on right now. So line 13, you set enter nutrition level equals, and then get valid number between 1 and 5, and then ask the question, what is your nutrition level? And then the 1 through 5.
I like it. Very fast, very quick. I want to go fast.
Can you make your terminal go away for a second?
I'm sorry, my terminal go away. Bye-bye, terminal. I'm going to reorder the questions here so that we meet the criteria, right? Because we want to get age, activity level, nutrition level, then dependence.
There's also if you are married.
Okay.
Independence.
It's time for if you are married. So this is the first input into our program that isn't a number. So we're not going to be able to use a lot of the code that we've written so far. Right, but it's going to be very similar. We're going to ask the user a question. We're going to make sure their input is something that we expect. We're going to keep asking until it is something that we expect. And then we will store the result. You'll recall that last time we wrote this function, is valid answer. We found out how to do a string insensitive string comparison. So we want a yes, no answer, right? I feel like this is part of the way there. Someone help me write this function to continue to make it meet our needs.
So how about, do we know, when we call bool.parse, do we know what that parse function will accept before it's like, I don't know. So that's one thing I don't know, but I think might help us here.
On line 53, what are you saying, bool.parse?
So a bool, if we parse an input, a string input into a bool, I'm not sure what that parse will accept. Will it only accept true and false in lowercase, uppercase, or will it accept yes or no?
What does parse do?
So I don't think we need to use bool.parse because yeah, we're really asking for marital status. We're trying to make it simple, right? But what if it was marital status? It could be married, it could be single. Maybe it's divorced and I'm paying alimony and I'm sad, right? Things like that. So they're not binary bits. So I think I think we're fine to store it as a string and do string comparisons for now. But if you use bool.parse, married yes, no is a binary decision and that would be fine. But I'm judging you.
All right.
I'm just gonna,
You're gonna cook for us if we do a great job?
what's that?
Are you gonna cook for us if we do?
Yes, dead codes categories. Do it.
On for that.
Okay, yes and no are valid answers for this program. So I think we're halfway there. Someone help me write the code to make sure that yes is a valid answer.
Oh. And answer like this. equals,
So I think you want to else if.
else, oh yeah, else if answer dot equals, and no, or yes, and do the string comparison.
Stop it, Danelle.
And that would return false. Because if both are going to return true, you need something, it's binary, so you need one that's different than the other, right?
So let me ask you this.
Oh,
What?
wait, we're just checking if that
No.
answer is valid, so true.
Okay.
Right, that's right. Forgot what the, now I see where the notes thing comes into play.
Okay, John. Just kidding.
We probably ought to do answer dot to lower dot. Just so that capital Y, yes.
So, yeah, that would be called for if we were just doing a call to equals, but equals has an overload that lets us say string comparison options. So right now we're saying we want to compare strings ignoring case.
Okay, never mind.
But yes, the two lower thing is basically the same. And you'll find it all throughout the health equity code base.
Okay.
Yep. You'll also find string or case insensitive or case sensitive string comparisons that often break our system. So we need you all to come fix those bugs.
Very good.
Okay. So same pattern here. We want to make sure we ask them these questions. If they type bananas, when we ask if they're married, we want to make sure and ask them again. So we're probably going to need, so this is our validation, right? This is very similar to this method, validate user entry. Right, but now we need the thing that actually asks them the question and returns the valid string. So let's write that function. Get string. I'm just going to call it get answer from user. Do you think there should be any inputs into this function? And if so, what? And if so, what?
What was the question?
Should there be any inputs to this function? This thing is going to be very similar to this function that gets a number. It's going to do the same activity, but just get us a string.
You need to write the string and then yeah.
I think question is a fine name of the input. Yeah, maybe I was asking confusing questions here, but it's very similar to this function where we want a number. We want to reuse this code. So we need to say, ask the user this question and hand me back their valid answer. So we need to provide the question for this function to ask. Okay? So I'm going to say string answer is equal to null, null. I don't even have to do this because that is the default value of string. And that's not my variable name. Okay, stop complaining. There you go. So I also need to something to key off of, right? Because we need to keep asking them this question and keep asking them this question. Okay, very good. While something. There's a function that we can use that maybe I haven't talked about, string dot is null or empty. So this is something we can use.
So if answer is null or empty, then it'll just keep asking.
So let's ask them the question. Then we need to get the input. What line of code do I need to write to get the input?
Read line.
Okay, we need to store the input. Okay, now we need to do the validation. Did they type the answer that we are expecting?
Yes. Input equals.
Gonna highlight this for no reason.
Is valid answer.
Is valid answer. I'm calling it, but it's saying you have to give me something, friend.
Yes, no.
That's right. Take the thing that the user just typed and pressed enter, pass it to our function down here. Is it no? Return true. If not, is it yes? Return true. Otherwise, return false. Okay, if the input is valid, then we're going to set the value to the answer variable. And the loop should exit, right? Because answer is now not null or empty. All right. Brian, I need to get the user input now for this part of the app. I need to ask them if they are married, and I want yes or no. So I've just written the function to ask them the question. I'm going to ask them over and over again if it's not valid. So now I need to get that input by calling the function. Can you help me write that code?
Sure. So first of all, you need to create a new function. Is that right?
So we've just created the functions. Yeah. So it's right here. Get answer from user.
Okay.
Yep.
So is there a function for the marriage? Like, is they're married or not?
No, not yet. We just need to ask them that question now. Yep.
Okay, so the variable there would be a string.
We'll give it that variable name.
Okay, and then get answer from user.
Very nice. Okay, I'm calling that, and Visual Studio's yelling at me and saying, hey, you did not give me a question to ask.
Okay, and the question is, are you married?
I'll add this so that they have a chance to know just exactly what to input. Okay, let's see if this works. I think it will. Thank you, Brian. My age, 31. Activity level to the max. Nutrition level, donuts. Dependents, I've got 3. Am I married? Cheese. Are you married? Stop asking me, Mom. Are you married? Yes.
You doctor yet?
Okay. Okay, very good. Very, very good. Okay, next question. What do we need to ask? We need to ask, User specified dependents, we got that. And now we need to ask their savings level and their employer benefits level. So how is we going to do this?
You can just copy and paste the nutrition level and just change it to, change the question and change the, there you go.
Okay, the question, I'm going to say, what is your dedication to savings level? I'm just going to do that. I'll call this, instead of nutrition level, savings level. Okay.
Same thing for the next one.
Okay. And this is benefits level, maybe. How are your employer benefits? Okay, let's make sure we're still good here. Apple Watch tells me it's time to stand.
You can pop that chair out, I mean, that table.
Oh, can you?
Yeah, you can pull it up.
Can you come do that? I'm just kidding. No, seriously, come do it. I'd have no idea. 10 kids. Am I married? No. Dedication to savings, 6. No, it's 5. Employer benefits, I'm not happy. Just kidding. I am very happy. Okay. Part 1 of this is all done. We have all of our inputs. Oh, God. Dang it. Save my talk. Save the pop!
Dang it. Hold on. Okay, there it goes. No, it just, oh, stupid thing. Don't pull that side over. It's
Not
gonna
touching.
fall. There it goes.
Oh, thank you. I am going to keep my taco over here, though.
You could just act like you're walking on the treadmill as well.
There you go. Okay, Apple Watch says I can sit down. Can you come? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Okay, that is the first part of our program. So when we meet next time, we're going to tackle number 2. We're going to tackle reading in the data from our file. Remember, the file format, or the file example file, is right down here, right? And I believe, John, you wrote a file generator. Do the events are they meaningful?
The events are CDC code descriptions.
Oh.
So sure.
Why not? Give me an example.
I got E. coli in here.
Okay. Very
I
nice.
think appropriately, we can call it sign amount though, like if you get E. coli, you get money into your HSA.
No, that's fine. So,
Congratulations.
yeah, John has a way to generate lots of fun files for us, so thank you for that, John. But yeah, we'll tackle this next time. Before we end, does anyone have any questions about getting these inputs or any of the code that we've written so far? I am going to put this up into Teams as a code snippet, so if you fell behind or whatever, you're welcome to just copy, and then you'll be caught up for our session on Thursday. So then I said, does anyone have any questions? And then I kept talking. Does anyone have any questions?
I still have a red squiggle and get answer from you.
Red squiggle. Deploy the red squiggle squad.
Who is this?
Right up front. All right, there's all of our code. And don't forget to press send when you do a code snippet. Got to do that every time. Okay. Any, should we just take one more walk through it before we're done?
Oh,
Works for me.
Okay.
I knew that.
We have now a couple top level functions, right? So we have get valid number from user. we use that 2 times, we get the age, so we don't care, there's no range of validation for age, right? We're not gonna say you can't be over 120, come on, right? Same thing from, for dependents, we're not gonna really limit how many dependents you have, though, bless your heart, you should, right? Get valid number between, so this is for times where we want to get a range of data, right? It takes more inputs, the high number, the low number, and the question. And then we have get answer from users. So this one we're going to have to look at more probably, maybe not, right? Because certainly our computer program can take in more strings than yes or no and handle them as valid, so. But not this computer program, okay? We created these functions. So these functions are right here, get valid number between, calls get valid number from user, which is a beautiful thing. Okay, we have get answer from user. And then we have a couple supporting functions. Validate user entry. So this one makes sure that the number typed really is a number, the input typed really is a number. And this supporting function says, did they type yes or no, otherwise return false, okay? Those are all the functions that we have right now. But there are 3 top-level functions, but we're getting, what, 9 pieces of data, so we're reusing these functions to get the data into our app, which is the whole reason for functions, right? We could have written this program without functions, but it would be 4 times the size. And then rude Braden would be like, it's no longer console.readline, it's console.breedline. And we'd have a bunch of places to go back and change. So. Okay, I'm done.